They say greed can destroy a family overnight. Mine didn't even need a full day. The moment my father's lawyer unfolded the will, my cousin Ryan stood up with a smile so confident it made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Then he looked directly at me and said, "Sorry, Emma. Looks like Uncle James finally realized who deserved his fortune." No one laughed. Because according to the document lying on the polished oak table, I wasn't receiving a single dollar. Every cent of my father's $50 million estate now belonged to Ryan. My aunt burst into fake tears. My uncle wrapped an arm around Ryan's shoulders like he'd just won an Olympic gold medal. Meanwhile, I couldn't even breathe. I wasn't angry because of the money. I was angry because my father would never have done this. He spent his entire life telling me one thing: never trust anyone who celebrates before the game is over. At the time I thought he meant business. I had no idea he was talking about his own family. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 33 years old, and until 3 weeks ago my father, James Carter, was one of the wealthiest technology entrepreneurs in California. People knew him as a billionaire investor. I knew him as the man who still made pancakes every Sunday. When my mother passed away during my teenage years, Dad raised me alone. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to negotiate, how to admit when I was wrong. Most importantly, he taught me that trust should never be given blindly. Ryan, my cousin, had been around since childhood. Growing up, he always wanted whatever belonged to someone else. If I received a new bicycle, Ryan suddenly needed a better one. If I earned an award at school, he somehow convinced everyone his achievement mattered more. As adults, nothing changed. Only the price tags became bigger. Ryan jumped from business idea to business idea, leaving behind bankrupt companies, unpaid debts, and angry investors. Yet somehow he always managed to convince relatives he was simply unlucky. Dad never believed him. He once told me, "Failure isn't dangerous. Refusing responsibility is." Ryan laughed whenever he heard that. 2 years before Dad died, Ryan suddenly became the perfect nephew. He visited every weekend. He brought expensive wine. He offered to help with hospital appointments after Dad's heart condition worsened. Everyone praised him. Even I started wondering if he'd finally grown up. Dad accepted Ryan's kindness politely. But every time Ryan left, Dad quietly locked his office door. One evening I asked why. He smiled. Because kindness that arrives with perfect timing usually has a receipt attached. I laughed. Now I wish I had asked more questions. The funeral was beautiful. Hundreds attended. Business partners, friends, charities, former employees. Everyone shared stories about Dad's generosity. Ryan cried louder than anyone. He hugged every guest. He thanked people for supporting our family. Something about it felt rehearsed. But grief makes you doubt your instincts. I ignored mine. That was my biggest mistake. 3 days later we gathered inside the law office. The atmosphere felt cold despite the expensive fireplace burning beside us. Our attorney, Mr. Harrison, adjusted his glasses before opening the sealed will. He looked unusually nervous. As instructed by James Carter. The room became silent. He began reading. Small donations to charities. Scholarships. Bonuses for longtime employees. Properties transferred to foundations. Everything sounded exactly like my father. Then came the final paragraph. I leave the remainder of my estate, including all investments, company shares, properties, and liquid assets, to my nephew Ryan Brooks. Silence. Then cheering. Shrill cheering. Ryan's mother clapped both hands together. My uncle laughed. Ryan stood up, pretending to wipe tears. I promise I'll honor Uncle James' legacy. People stared at me, waiting, expecting me to scream. Instead I simply asked one question. Is that the entire document? Mr. Harrison hesitated. Yes. His voice cracked. Just slightly. Enough for me to notice. Ryan noticed too. He quickly interrupted. If there's nothing else, I'd like to begin transferring ownership. His excitement felt desperate. Outside the building, rain poured across the parking lot. I stood alone holding my father's watch. It had stopped working the exact minute he passed away. I kept turning it over in my hand when someone quietly approached. It was Martha, Dad's executive assistant. She had worked beside him for 27 years. She looked terrified. Emma, can we talk somewhere private? We drove to a small coffee shop across town. She refused to speak until both our phones were switched off. Then she leaned forward. Your father expected today. I frowned. What do you mean? He told me if Ryan celebrated after the will reading, something had gone terribly wrong. Every hair on my arms stood up. He actually said that? She nodded. Exactly those words. I stared at her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because he instructed me to wait until after the reading. She reached into her purse. Inside was a tiny brass key attached to an old leather tag. Written across it were only 3 words. For Emma only. My heartbeat doubled. What does it open? I don't know. He never told you? No. She swallowed nervously. But he said you'd understand. I didn't. Not even a little. That night I searched my apartment for hours. The key matched nothing. No desk. No cabinet. No safe. Nothing. Around midnight, exhausted, I placed it beside Dad's old watch. As I looked at both items together, something clicked. The watch. Dad never wore ordinary watches. He collected antique mechanical timepieces. Every important memory somehow involved one. His office. His workshop. His private vault. The workshop. I hadn't visited since before the funeral. Early the next morning I drove there. Dust covered every workbench exactly as Dad had left it. Rows of clocks ticked softly against the walls. Then I noticed something strange. One grandfather clock wasn't ticking. Dad hated silent clocks. I walked toward it. Near the bottom, hidden behind the carved wooden frame, was a tiny brass keyhole. My hands began shaking. The key fit perfectly. A soft click echoed through the empty workshop. The entire back panel slowly unlocked. Inside wasn't money. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't another will. It was a single large cream-colored envelope. Across the front, written in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words that made my blood run cold. Open only after Ryan thinks he has won. I froze. Because at that exact moment, the doorknob rattled once. Then again. I quickly slipped the envelope beneath my jacket and looked around the workshop. Emma, a familiar voice called. It was Ryan. I forced a calm smile as I opened the door just a few inches. What are you doing here? He shrugged. I figured you'd come looking through Uncle James' old things. His eyes wandered past me, scanning every shelf. You know, sometimes people hide valuables in places like this. His smile never reached his eyes. I was just remembering Dad, I replied. Ryan nodded, but he wasn't convinced. Well, don't stay too long. He leaned closer. Everything in here belongs to me now. He walked away laughing. I waited until his car disappeared before locking the workshop door again. With trembling hands, I placed the cream-colored envelope on Dad's workbench. The wax seal carried our family crest. For a long moment, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Finally, I broke the seal. Inside were 3 items. A handwritten letter. A small silver USB drive. And another sealed envelope marked. Give this to Harrison only after he watches the video. My heart pounded. I unfolded Dad's letter. Emma, if you're reading this, Ryan celebrated during the will reading. That means my suspicions were correct. For nearly a year, someone has been trying to manipulate my estate. I couldn't accuse anyone without proof. So I created a test. The will everyone heard is real, but only half of my plan. The truth is on the USB drive. Trust no one until Harrison sees it. Love always, Dad. I immediately plugged the USB drive into Dad's old computer. A video filled the screen. Dad looked tired, but his voice was steady. If this recording is being watched, someone believed they successfully stole my estate. He looked directly into the camera. Ryan, if it's you, listen carefully. I felt chills run down my spine. You thought I never noticed the forged signatures. What? Dad continued. You convinced my nurse to leave my office while you searched through confidential files. You bribed one employee. You attempted to replace pages from my original will. But you made one mistake. Dad smiled. You forgot I built technology companies. The screen changed. Security footage appeared. There was Ryan. Inside Dad's private office. Opening drawers. Photographing documents. Replacing papers. Changing dates. Even meeting secretly with a man carrying legal folders. Every second had been recorded from hidden cameras. My mouth fell open. Dad had known everything. He simply waited. The video returned to him. I allowed the fake will to remain because greed reveals itself when people think they've already won. Then Dad held up another document. My real estate plan activates only after this recording is delivered. He smiled warmly. Emma, finish what I started. The video ended. I sat in silence. Then I picked up the second envelope. Tomorrow, Ryan's victory would end. The next morning, Attorney Harrison agreed to meet privately. The moment he watched the recording, his face turned pale. I had no idea, he whispered. He carefully opened Dad's second envelope. Inside was a notarized legal instruction signed months earlier. It explained everything. The first will had been intentionally left vulnerable. The actual inheritance was protected by a private trust that could only be activated if evidence of fraud surfaced. And the evidence was now undeniable. Harrison looked at me. We're going back to court. Ryan couldn't stop smiling when he entered the courtroom. He wore a brand new designer suit. Reporters surrounded him. He confidently answered questions. My uncle trusted me. I'll continue his legacy. My cousin is simply struggling to accept his wishes. He even waved at the cameras. Inside, the judge called everyone to order. Ryan's lawyer stood first. My client legally inherited the Carter estate. Attorney Harrison slowly rose. Your Honor. We have new evidence. Ryan rolled his eyes. What evidence? Harrison placed the USB drive before the judge. This recording was left by James Carter under sealed legal instruction. Ryan's confidence slipped for the first time. The lights dimmed. The courtroom watched the video. Every second. Every hidden camera recording. Every forged document. Every secret meeting. Every stolen page. By the time it ended, the room was completely silent. Ryan looked as though all the blood had drained from his face. His lawyer slowly lowered his head. Then came the worst moment for Ryan. The judge asked only one question. Mr. Brooks, would you like to explain why you were recorded altering legal documents inside the deceased's private office? Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The forensic document examiner confirmed the signatures had been manipulated. Digital experts verified the security footage hadn't been edited. Bank records showed Ryan had transferred large payments to the man who helped prepare the fake documents. Piece after piece. Everything collapsed. Ryan's attorney quietly whispered something to him. Moments later, he stood. My client withdraws all inheritance claims. The courtroom erupted with whispers. But the judge wasn't finished. She ordered the fraud investigation to continue. Forgery. Attempted theft. Conspiracy. Destruction. Ryan now faced criminal charges far more serious than losing money. Outside the courthouse, reporters chased him down the steps. Ryan, did you forge the will? Did you steal from your uncle? Are the recordings authentic? He covered his face and pushed through the crowd. No one applauded him now. No one called him the perfect nephew. Even his parents walked away without saying a word. Greed had finally left him completely alone. A week later, Harrison invited me back to his office. The trust has officially transferred. I signed the final documents. Dad's true estate, worth nearly $50 million, was finally mine. But Harrison smiled. There's one last surprise. He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was Dad's favorite fountain pen. Beneath it rested one final handwritten note. Emma. Money was never the inheritance. Character was. If Ryan had chosen honesty, he would have received enough to build a wonderful life. Instead, he chose shortcuts. Never let wealth change who you are. Use it to change someone else's future. That's how our family should truly be remembered. Love, Dad. Tears filled my eyes. For the first time since his funeral, I smiled. Over the next year, I honored every promise Dad had ever made. We expanded scholarship programs, built technology centers for underserved schools, created grants for young entrepreneurs who couldn't afford investors. Hundreds of employees kept their jobs. Every charity Dad supported continued receiving funding. His legacy survived. Not because of $50 million, but because kindness proved stronger than greed. As for Ryan, he lost everything. His expensive house was sold. His luxury cars disappeared. Business partners abandoned him. Friends stopped answering his calls. In the end, the fortune he chased so desperately was never what destroyed him. It was the choice he made the moment he believed no one was watching. The saddest part? Someone was. My father. From the very beginning. And with one secret envelope. He made sure the truth would always win.